But all right, we'll go ahead and get started. And I guess if other people join, they'll catch up. Thanks again for everybody being here. Hopefully you're having a good week. Of course, today we're actually going to read chapter 1, 36 through 46, and that actually ends chapter 1. So, what we're going to see here is essentially when emotion overrides dharma. We talked about dharma and like what you're doing, what you're supposed to be doing, and figuring that out. That's kind of like the purpose of life, right? Is like trying to figure out what the heck I'm doing. Um, but sometimes emotion can override your dharma. So we covered dharma, of course, in last session. And again, just to recap, it's doing what is right according to your role, your nature, the situation you're in, as well as aligning with truth, and not just what feels comfortable. Like sometimes doing the right thing's the hard thing, and that's just kind of part of dharma. And of course, as we'll see in these like next 10 verses, the last 10 verses, it's a powerful close to chapter 1. Arjuna goes from hesitation to basically full refusal. So we're going to look into that. Of course, like we talked about last session, Arjuna began to struggle internally after seeing his family on the battlefield, seeing everybody on the other side over there. In this section, the struggle actually deepens into full confusion, where he begins to justify why he should not act and why he shouldn't. He just keeps coming up with excuses and stuff. So, does everybody have I think Gregory, you have one, don't you? Or okay, I was gonna pull it up on the screen, but if y'all have it, then we're good. So, we're gonna do 36, chapter 1, 36, through 38 to kick it off here. We'll read these first two. So, all right, so chapter 136, and we'll do through 38. So 36. Sin will overcome us if we slay such aggressors. Therefore, it is not proper for us to kill the sons of Dhritarashtra and our friends. What should we gain, O Krishna, husband of the goddess of fortune, and how could we be happy by killing our own kinsmen? 37, 38. O Janadarna, although these men, their hearts overtaken by greed, see no fault in killing one's family or quarreling with friends, why should we, who can see the crime in destroying a family, engage in these acts of sin? So Arjuna is basically saying, I see no good in this. There's no good can come from killing family. Not even if I get a kingdom out of this, it's not worth it. He even tries to validate that they're not good people, but it's still not worth it. So you can tell the struggle is just back and forth there. And while Arjuna wanted to deal with them saintly, he wanted to forgive them and not kill them, that's like we talked about, it's not his dharma. That's not a role of a warrior. He even points out interesting part is he points out Krishna's wife, the goddess of fortune, trying to say, you shouldn't have me do this because, your wife's the goddess of fortune. This will be a misfortune if we do this. And which is false, of course, because Krishna never brings misfortune. So he's just literally trying everything and just trying to throw all the cards at the table. And he's speaking from bodily attachment. He's losing sight of what his duty is, what the spiritual understanding is. And this is what may sound like compassion, but it's still rooted in identification with the body. And obligation is actually binding when the effects are good, but not when the effect is otherwise. So, considering all these pros and cons, of course, Arjuna is saying, I'm not fighting, I'm not doing it. So let's read on 39 through 43 here. See what happens. So 39. With the destruction of the dynasty, the eternal family tradition is vanquished, and thus the rest of the family becomes involved in irreligion. 40. When irreligion is prominent in the family, O Krishna, the women of the family become polluted, and from the degradation of womanhood, O descendant of Vrishni, comes unwanted progeny. 41. An increase of unwanted population certainly causes hellish life, both for the family and for those who destroy the family tradition. The ancestors of such corrupt families fall down because the performances for offering them food and water are entirely stopped. 42. By the evil deeds of those who destroy the family tradition and thus give rise to unwanted children, all kinds of community projects and family welfare activities are devastated. And 43. O Krishna, maintainer of the people, I have heard by disciplic succession that those whose family traditions are destroyed dwell always in hell. All right, so that sounds pretty intense, like reading through that stuff, because he's just grasping at all the straws here. He's literally, oh, family destruction. If I destroy these families, it's just going to lead to chaos. He's trying to give a more philosophical conclusion and argument here. Like we're going to destroy family traditions, society's going to get degraded, irreligion's going to increase. And this is where Arjuna starts to kind of sound intelligent and moral. But as Prabhupada mentions in some of the purports, his conclusions are still misapplied. He's because he's again he's avoiding his actual duty. And sometimes we can try to say we're doing things for a proper cause, but is it really what's it like the deep seed in there? Is it like trying to skirt something that you're supposed to do, like, well, I went and helped this person when maybe you were supposed to, like, I don't know, go to work, or like, I mean there's multiple examples where you could kind of fit that into that mold to where you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing, and it may sound like you're doing something good, but ultimately, that again, that's the whole point of, as we continue to go through this, is trying to figure out what our dharma is, what you know, our purpose in this life is. So now this again, Arjuna's kind of sounded intelligent here, because it's like, well, he's making sense, I mean, you kill somebody's dad and they don't have a dad, and then, you know, what's the mom gonna do? And like, I mean, he's that's basically what he's trying to lay out here, because but again, he's just avoiding his actual duty. He's trying to look at the big picture, so to speak, but he's trying to say family traditions stop. Irreligion runs rampant. Unwanted children are born. Society's going to be in chaos, and I mean, he's just going on and on. Now, to there's like a you may not know, but there's kind of like an elephant in the room as far as like these few verses here, especially in the purport of 40. So we have to keep in mind, because we all have the same version. So 40, when you first read it, and if you're like me, I was like, WTF? Like, what the hell's he talking about? Because there's some stuff that didn't age well, and we also have to take into consideration what, I mean, just to, rip the Band-Aid off here, he talks about how um, as children are very prone to be misled, women are similarly prone to being misled. And there's some things that kind of come off as misogynistic in the purport of 40. So it's like, I just wanted to bring it up and talk about it because, if you all are reading on your own, you're going to read that and instantly probably be turned off. So we just want to talk about it. So first off, it didn't age well, obviously. But I've listened to many lectures from Prabhupada. And one of the things that he was very adamant about was, number one, he said, English isn't my first language. I try to, translate the best I can, but sometimes that doesn't come off right. And sometimes the point doesn't come across as clear as it should be. Also, you have to think about, this guy was probably born in, like, I don't know, the 20s or something. You know what I mean? And in India, which at that time, and even some areas today still have arranged marriages. They still have, they're very still based in the ancient Vedic culture when it comes to relationships. So he's when he wrote this, he was still wasn't fully engaged with the Western culture, so to speak, to realize that this isn't something that's going to, it's going to hit home for maybe some Indian people, and understand those type of things. But like I said, I just want to talk about it because it's based on the traditional Vedic society. with an emphasis on really on protection of women and the stability of the family. But and of course, like I said, it's highly structured over there. But just some things to note about that, though, is these texts, of course, are really deep and come from a different time and culture, obviously. And of course, my goal isn't here to like defend it or anything by those means, but it's to understand and dive into the intention behind them and what we can get from it and the spiritual principles that are being taught that we can grasp. Because ultimately, and we'll see this as we continue to go through the Gita, it ultimately teaches, and we'll especially dive into it really at the beginning of chapter 2, is that we're not this body. It doesn't matter if you're a man, a woman, how you identify, if you have hair, no hair, if you it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter your skin color, doesn't matter anything. Wiki wiki. But like it does not matter at all. Like we are not this body, we're just the soul. So it doesn't a lot of that's one thing that I have found is even when I go to maybe like a Hindu temple and worship, nobody gives me crap because I got tattoos because they know and they see that I'm not this body. This is just a meat sack I'm wearing around over my spirit soul. So it's very refreshing to be in those type of spaces because as anybody that's potentially felt like an outcast, you can go to certain places and it's like, oh man, I just feel out of place here. But those type of places are because again, their lens is different. They see that we're not this body. So that's why, and Prabhupada even talks about that. So that's why I know that the real intention behind this was just did not come off well because he talks about that a lot of how we're not the body, we're not the mind, but we're a spirit soul. And any material designation of including gender is secondary to what our identity is as a soul. And the central idea here is that when dharma breaks down, it affects everyone. It affects families, it affects society, it affects future generations, and that's really the point that's trying to get pushed across here. A balanced way to explain it's really a balanced way to explain it in bhakti philosophy. That every living being is understood as a soul beyond the body, and beyond the gender, and everybody's equal parts of Krishna. That's literally what it boils down to. Intelligence without proper spiritual alignment can lead us in the wrong direction. So, anyway, I just wanted to talk about that because, like I said, if you're reading on your own, um, I didn't want anybody to have a WTF moment there, reading that because, again, it is kind of, like I said, it kind of hit me first time I read it, like, what is going on here? But that's what I have learned from it. But moving on, we'll read 44 through 46 here, and we will finish out the chapter. So, text 44. Alas, how strange it is that we are preparing to commit greatly sinful acts. Driven by the desire to enjoy royal happiness, we are intent on killing our own kinsmen. Better for me if the sons of Dhritarashtra, weapons in hand, were to kill me unarmed and unresisting on the battlefield. Sanjaya said, Arjuna, having thus spoken on the battlefield, cast aside his bow and arrows and sat down on the chariot, his mind overwhelmed with grief. Um, Again, he's saying, I'm not going to fight. He basically concludes that he's better to be killed unarmed than to even fight. He doesn't, it's basically, he'd rather commit suicide. He doesn't want to have a weapon. He'd just rather be killed off and then just sets his bow and arrow down, sits down on the chariot, probably hands, over his head, just not knowing what to do. Um, the, the thing to think about here that I think is kind of wild is, of course, we have to remember he's literally sitting in the middle of the battlefield. So I just wonder what's going through the mind of the other side. Like, what the heck's this guy doing? He's literally having a mental breakdown in the middle of the field. So they're probably feeling pretty good because they're like their lead warriors just crashing out here in the middle of the field. Because even if Arjuna is disinclined to fight, the opposite side is still inclined to fight. They're still ready to go and kill him. But Arjuna, prefers to die in their hands without opposition, considering that atonement basically for the sins of even thinking about killing these people, which again is sounds good, but again, I know I'm kind of beating it over the head, but we have to figure out what our dharma is. But this moment here is the dude is done. He's cashed out. He's sitting on the chariot, not doing it. Um, Again, I just think it's so wild to think about the other side just sitting over there, just watching this all go down. And that's how chapter one ends. Arjuna is overwhelmed. He's confused. He's literally paralyzed and broken down on, sitting there. And oh, there's something in the chat. Sorry, I didn't have my chat open. Oh, 1896. Thank you, Faith. Yeah, Prabhupada was born in 1896. Yeah, that's how old he was. So again, that was quite a long time ago. Just to put in perspective. But yeah, Arjuna, and I think the thing that I love about bhakti yoga, as well as like Vedic culture, as well as diving into these texts, is it's not wrong thinking to question everything. That's literally every spot I've been to or anyone I've talked to, that's what they encourage. Because if you can't question it and then bring up your beliefs or your thoughts behind it, then what are we doing here? So to me, that's one thing that has always been pushed on to me is question everything. And that's really what Arjuna is doing here. He's questioning everything. He's trying to balance it with more principles and stuff, but that's kind of what we have to do as well is we question everything, try to balance it with principles, but maybe not just principles, mix it with, sacred texts like the Bhagavad Gita. Um, do obviously self-reflection, look within, what can I work on? How can I be a better person? How can I grow from this? What can I learn from this situation? Um, Again, we must find our dharma. Now, when you break down and you don't have an answer, or feel lost or at the bottom, that I know from personal experience, that's always the easiest time to receive self-knowledge, because sometimes when everything's going right, I mean, what do you got to reflect on? Life's great. But it's like, man, how did I get here? What the heck's going on? And you start, what did I do? What did I do to deserve this? Or what did it, and you start self-reflecting. But ultimately, you want to do that even in the good times. What can I learn? How did I get blessed so much by this? Like, like what can I learn from this? How can I still grow? Because, if you get to the point where you don't think you have anything to work on, then you've got a lot to work on, is really how it is. So, I think self-reflection is, and receiving that self-knowledge and just trying to be in that mindset is very beneficial in every situation. Um, but to kind of big picture wrap up chapter one, just some themes. There was really four main themes that we saw in chapter one. Of course, the Gita began with confusion. Um, Hi. Oh, thank you. Spiritual life doesn't begin when everything is clear. It begins when there's confusion and it becomes unbearable. And that's usually where we start to self-reflect, start to look within, try to figure out um, what's my purpose, what's my dharma, and those are the things you start kind of looking into. Two, another theme was attachment clouds clarity. And, that can be attachment to family, relationships, emotions. And those aren't wrong. Those aren't bad things to be attached to because that's human nature, but they can mislead us, you know, um, especially if there's a relationship that's, you know, you may have good intentions, but if you don't see eye to eye on stuff and they're kind of pulling you this way, a lot of times they always say what relationships or should be like 60-40. You're always giving 60 in there, that way everybody's giving more than what they're taking. But, um, it's just we have to make sure that we find a balance there to make sure we're taking care of ourselves, looking within and growing as well. And just make sure we're not so attached that we lose sight of our own purpose. Three, emotion versus dharma, of course. So Arjuna knew what was right. He knew he was a warrior. He knew what he was supposed to be doing, but he just couldn't bring himself to do it. And, I know that there's been times when personally, when knew what I was supposed to do, what the right thing was to do, and I chose the wrong thing. And you just kind of have to own up to it and grow and, again, self-reflect and see what can I learn from this? Because obviously this happened, and why did I let this happen? And then you can't beat yourself up, but you definitely need to take those times and really learn and grow from them because that's how we continually improve is, of course, like I said, self-reflection. And lastly, the fourth point of chapter one was, of course, the need for guidance. So this is really the key transition here in the Bhagavad Gita going into chapter two, because Arjuna can't resolve this on his own. He can't figure this out. I mean, he just threw the towel in, which is going to lead us to Krishna talking to him in chapter two. I mean, and if the Bhagavad Gita just ended there at chapter one, it'd be a pretty sad book, like, man, what a bummer. The guy just like collapsed on the battlefield and threw in the towel. Like, I mean, but it's also relatable, I mean, I know I've personally been there where it's like, dude, I'm done. I can't go any further, but newsflash, spoiler alert, we all survived. We all grew from it. And I would say 98% of people would say after they dealt with something that bad, I was better off. That was a horrible time in my life, but you know what? I'm actually better off. Like, I'm glad that I went through this crappy relationship. I actually learned quite a bit about myself and what I can stand and not withstand. And, and so I think it's always neat to, if we kind of look back on those times where we maybe had a really rough time and we kind of self-reflect and look, we're like, you know what? Those were like the greatest times of growth for me. So I think it's good to reflect on those, but also reflect on the good times because we can still learn a lot from those times. Um, so I do have a couple of like little discussion things here. We'll see what everybody thinks. But question I had down was, have you ever justified avoiding something difficult to make it sound like the right decision? Teresa's like, oh yeah. I think a lot of us have probably done that, you know. Anybody want to share?
I'll share my real world example.
All right.
I don't get along with either one of my sisters, and that makes holidays really hard because both my parents are still together and still alive. And so, of course, like Christmas time, everyone gets together and yada yada. So, for the last few years, I've been volunteering for different nonprofit organizations on Christmas Day, which gets me out of Christmas completely with my
Hmm.
family.
I can
So I'm
see.
putting,
Yeah.
I'm, I'm putting some good karma out there because I'm showing up for service for other people. But I choose that day so I don't. It gives me a perfect excuse to not have to deal with
Yeah.
family.
Yeah. I mean, that's a perfect example, like of, hey, I'm doing something good here. I'm maybe avoiding like a difficult conversation or just a
Right,
situation altogether.
and that was an actual like, how can I get out of this? I know eventually it came up with that. I know how I can get out of it. I can go
Yeah.
donate my time somewhere. And then what are they going to do? Say, what do you mean you're donating here? What do you
Yeah.
mean you're showing up for a nonprofit to go help somebody out, deliver food or make meals?
Yeah.
So they can't get mad at me for it because I'm doing something good. But on the flip side, I'm not really just doing it. It's just that's the day I
Yeah.
choose to do it because it gets me out of.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. Yeah, I'd say that's probably, yeah, instead of you sitting at the chariot, you're just like sitting at the food table handing out food. You know, I get
Yep.
it. I mean,
Yep.
yeah, that's really good. Anyone else want to share? Are you good? All good? All right, I got another question. So what do you think is harder, knowing the right thing or doing it? That's that's another one that's because personally, if I know what I'm supposed to do and I know how to handle something, it's like, dang it, man, why aren't you just doing it? Like I'm almost harder on myself, but now if somebody's like, "Hey, how come you didn't help me do this?" I'm like, I didn't know. I'm sorry, I didn't know. Like, at least you have almost like an excuse, if you're not doing it because you didn't know, but if you know it and you're not doing it, I mean, that's avoidance, I would, I mean, that I think that's a pretty tough question because whether you all want to share or not, I think if we all kind of self-reflected and it's like, man, there's been times I've known to do the right thing and just didn't do it, or so it's hard. I guess by saying that and thinking that out loud, I guess it's harder doing it sometimes, you know, because I think deep down, I think we all want to do good. We all want to be like good people. We don't want to be jerks, or mean to people. We want to do the right thing. I think ultimately most people in the world want to do good or at least be decent people. But I think sometimes we get scared to do it because we're either afraid of, making somebody upset or impacting them, or, we worry too much about the external stuff as opposed to following through, you know. Thoughts? Hmm.
Yeah, if I could jump in, I mean, I would add, not everything's always so black and white. Kind of goes back to your
Correct.
first question. Not everything's a Marvel movie where the bad guys are those people and the good
Yeah.
guys are these. Sometimes everything's gray, and it's easy to find ways to justify things. Example of your first question, I had a friend that was a bartender, and they were able to justify serving poison to people by saying, I'm a mixologist who provides like liquid courage, and I bring out fun moments for people. And while that's true, you can consider those
Sure.
things to have validity. In the long term, alcohol, for the most part, can really damage people's lives and ruin people's lives. And I think that's how people can carry out some of the horrible jobs in society,
Hmm.
by finding ways to justify it and being like, well, this job at least pays the bills and I can provide a good life for my kids. But knowing that they're a horrible landlord, if that's the job that they've done. So I think it's
Sure.
easy to muddy the waters, and it's hard to have define black and white and know what is truly good and what isn't.
Yeah, I agree. And that's the other thing is if, without trying to get too deep, but it's like who defines what's right and what's wrong, that's always like the age-old question of deciding, is because if I say the water is hot and you're like, no, it's just lukewarm, that's just we don't know, hey, this is ice cold. Well, actually, it's just lukewarm. Everybody's gauge of what's right and what's wrong is totally different. And so I think that's also where the whole detachment piece probably comes in to where it's like, am I just so attached to what I think is right that I'm not willing to listen to what other people say? Or, you know, and that, or am I just not listening to what I should be listening to? And, I'm attached to just making money because I want to serve alcohol, you know? I mean, because if their ultimate goal is to make money, I mean, there's other jobs out there. There's other things, especially if you are trying to make excuses for something, I mean, you might already want to start to self-evaluate. Let's see, Faith put in the chat, knowing it and not doing it is the hardest because you are aware of your not doing it. If you do not know, then you have no problems. That is true. Yeah. And I think it is tough so I think for me sometimes, like as I've gotten older, like I don't care as much what people think. I just kind of do my own thing. And it makes so much more sense when you watch like some of these like shows or you see the old man on the mall bench and he just does not care. I mean, they don't care. And it makes a lot more sense because they're so much more comfortable with who they are. And I think we have to get to that point. I think that's, to me, I have to get to that point to where it's like, well, I don't care. I know what I feel like my dharma is, and of course you have to keep checking it. It's like, I think I mentioned this before. It's like the bowling alley with like the bumpers up. Like I think I'm going this way, but then I hit it, and I kind of keep bouncing between there to make sure I'm staying where I need to go. But that's you self-reflect and you make sure you're on the path you're supposed to be on. But ultimately, I'm just going to do what I feel like I'm called or need to do, and then we'll, we'll see what happens. But if somebody doesn't, you know, I guess care for it, I guess we'll see. But that's how I feel my dharma is. I mean, I'll talk to you about it, but if I'm on my path and I'm doing what I feel like I'm supposed to be doing, then I guess we're good. And I think that sometimes that's hard though, because we're just built to where we want to, I don't want to say please people, but you want to be included in things just because that's life. That's human nature, is to be in a community and feel part of it. But anyway, so chapter one, of course, as we could tell, it doesn't end in clarity. He still doesn't know what the hell he's doing. He's sitting down on the chariot, um, but he is surrendering to confusion, and that's what opens the door for Krishna to begin speaking and teaching him some deep philosophical points and what we like to call spiritual science. Because when it's a science, you can apply it and you can use it, and it's just really neat because he's really a kind and soft-hearted person, Arjuna, that he's just, breaking down and doesn't want to do this. That type of composure and compassion and type of person is really fit to receive self-knowledge. When you kind of let go and release, I'm ready. What what is the world got for me? What am I being taught? Well, how can I apply these things? And he's going to receive this self-knowledge and learn about the Atma or the soul, and not one that's not cruel, or one that's cruel and violent and just hardened isn't ready to open up and hear these type of things. So, I mean, you really have to kind of soften yourself up and be able to just listen with an open mind and open heart. And these things really apply, these ancient teachings really apply, and it's pretty awesome. And it'll be neat to see this transition into chapter two, because next session, of course, Arjuna turns to Krishna for guidance, and that's really where the teachings of the Gita begin, and we dive into it. Um, Now, anybody have any questions or anything? So I kind of blazed through that.
Yeah, I've got a question back in. And my questions aren't coming from a point of challenge. It's
No, no, you're
curious.
good. And if
Okay.
I don't know, I'm not gonna make it up. I'm gonna go ahead and tell you.
Yeah. Well, thanks so much for sending these books. The Civilization and Transcendence one that you sent
Yeah.
clarified a lot for me. I know so little about any of this, but it created more questions.
Yeah.
It's such a short book, so I pulled out like a tiny notebook and I was like, I'll just take a few notes. And I ended up filling up 2 pages of like a full notebook here.
Yeah, that book's pretty intense, but it's like it's got a lot of information. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and it is, I guess, coming from just this one guy's opinion, where he even says in here, trust no one else's opinions. Like everyone else will mislead you. There's only really one guru, and that's Krishna. Everyone else is
Yeah.
just a self-reflection of that. But you had made a point at the beginning of this call saying, and I'm misparaphrasing it because I didn't write down your words exactly, but basically that Krishna is infallible and can do no wrong or do no damage. But I mean, isn't Krishna the embodiment of all things, which would include damage and destruction? I mean, here he is asking Arjuna
So
to slay his own.
yes. Yes, that basically, to answer your question, literally everything is an embodiment of Krishna. So every living entity. Now, so that even goes to like, so without getting like too terribly deep, but the Vaishnava theology is essentially that Krishna isn't every single living thing. So grass, trees, dogs, birds, atoms, literally every living thing is a part and parcel of Krishna. Now we all have like pieces of him, but of course we can never equate to him because he's all pervasive, just all um he just encompasses everything. So the thought and the belief, of course, is that we have our soul within us, but beside our soul is the Paramatma, which is the super soul, which is Krishna. So if you were to do like a little cutaway of your chest, the belief is there's a your soul, and of course, when you pass away, you go on to another body, um, onto another living body, and that's the whole point of learning from our karma and learning our dharma, is because every life that we're trying to learn something and we're trying to figure out what the purpose of life is, and until we get it. So they've brought up things like I've listened to things about, like it's and this is like a gross analogy, and this is like very, very extreme. So, and it doesn't come from a place of like belittling somebody that may be like in a wheelchair or something, but essentially, say somebody is born and, is does not have access to their legs, of course, we don't know what their karma was from their last life. So they may have, I don't know, beaten the hell out of a kid's legs. You know what I mean? Just like I said, this is an extreme example, but the lens is we don't know what other people have went through, what lessons they're trying to learn. And so we take empathy on everybody. Of course, there's nonviolence, of course, is a belief, but it's like what I don't really worry about what other people are doing, I'm worrying about, okay, what lessons do I need to learn? What karma do I need to set right? And ultimately, in Vaishnava culture and theology, the whole point is to go back to Godhead, which is essentially once we make that connection to Krishna, instead of just doing samsara, where we're just life over life over life, we break that cycle. And that's how you would get up to what they call the upper planetary system. So the belief is that there's multiple planets. So you could actually break the cycle and get up to a higher planet, but it wouldn't necessarily be back to Godhead with Krishna. You could like so like say there's like we'll just say Śrīla Prabhupāda, for instance, I'm assuming he's probably up there, like up with hanging out with Krishna because the guy like wrote so many books and is just like his impact worldwide is just insane. But we'll just say, what if he only goes up to secondary planet? He may be there for, I don't know, thousands of lifetimes, but eventually, if there was a lesson that he didn't learn, he may come back down until he ultimately gets up there. But I don't know if that really answers your question. I know I kind of like all over the place, but I guess what I'm getting into is that we are all parts and parcels of Krishna. We all have a soul within us. Um, that's one of the reasons why, like, I actually like when I chant, I'm actually like, my dogs are usually beside me because my hope is that in their next life, maybe they'll get a human body and they'll be able to make decisions and, you know, potentially choose to turn towards bhakti, and turn towards those are the things I think about when my dogs are sitting around me because I want them to be liberated. I want them to be, not stuck in a dog body, And I guess one of the things that to think about too is that's it's very rare that we get a human body like when it comes to reincarnation. They say it's really rare. They say that when we've done this, we've actually got good karma in our past lives. That's the whole reason we ended up in a human body because we are able to make decisions, we're able to make choices, we're able to do those things. Now, if you make the wrong choices, there's a story in the Srimad Bhagavatam where this is a pretty good example where these two guys were like I think they called them like demons, but I think they were like thieves and like they were just like really crappy guys and they ended up getting cursed and they died and turned into trees, came back as trees because they needed to learn their lesson. So they were there for like of course, hundreds and I mean, they're like big, thick trees, you know. So I guess what do you learn as a tree? You know, I don't know. I hope I don't find out. But again, that's still they're still part and parcel of Krishna, you know, even though they may have downgraded a bit, you know, if you think about it, because they don't have um cognitive skills as a tree, you know. I don't know. Did that answer your question? Like I said, I'm like all over the place, but I just got all these thoughts and like, but I'm trying not to give you like too much information.
Sure. I mean, one could argue that you could ascend into being a tree. It almost seems like cognitive thought is punishment. You know, that the curse of being human is a pretty
Uh,
heavy.
well, see, that's the thing is what one thing that Prabhupada always says is the thing that kind of sets us apart from, of course, trees. They, uh, and I mean, I guess the argument could be made that they do this too, but essentially, animal kingdom and all those things, all they do is eat, sleep, mate, and defend. That's literally all they do, you know, and if you look at the world nowadays, that's one of the reasons that I feel like we're in the shape we're in is because that's all that people do. Eat, sleep, mate, and defend. And then I go back to bed and I eat, sleep, mate, and defend. And then I go, you know, instead of trying to use, like, I've got this brain, let me try to dive into something that gives my life value, meaning, and purpose. And let me use my, you know, it's kind of sad. What they say we use like what, like 5% of our brain or something, you know? You know, I probably use even less, but it's you know, we've been given these skill sets and these faculties, I guess, to be able to do these things that, you know, my dog's over here scooting his butt on the carpet, you know. I'm not going to do that. But, you know, it's is he living the life? Yeah, he's great, man. He's getting fed. He's getting to lay over here. He gets to sleep in the bed with me sometimes, you know? I mean, but does he have any choices? Not really. Eat, sleep, mate, and defend, you know? So, I mean, I get, you know, it's kind of one of those things where I know I've heard other people joke about it, like, man, I wish I had the dog's life, you know, because they don't have to worry about bills or do any of this stuff, which, I mean, yeah, that'd be awesome to not worry about bills, but um, he also doesn't get to choose where he goes for the day. You know, he stays in the house or goes in the backyard. And so I don't know. You know, it's an interesting discussion there about that. You know what I mean? So, but yeah.
Yeah. No, thanks for providing some clarity. Yeah,
Yeah.
I've just gotten more questions than answers after reading things, which I guess is that's what you want, right? I
Oh,
mean,
yeah. Well, and that's kind of what I was talking about. Question everything. You know what I
right.
mean? And again, I've been in bhakti now for maybe about 4 years. So I know I don't have all the answers. You know, I just get like little morsels from here and there, and I'm like, that blew my mind, you know, and then that's kind of one of the reasons why like I wanted to do this because I get excited about talking about this stuff because it was just like so cool and impacted me really good. But I think sometimes I get too excited and I just like trip over my words and then I'm like, oh, and then this, and I just like because I just like want to talk about it, you know. So my apologies, but you know, you can always like message me too if you got any questions and like you know, feel free. But I will say that's actually a perfect segue, Aaron. So this next session, I wanted to share with you all. We're gonna have a guest speaker. Um, it's um, it's gonna be awesome. It'll actually be a different Zoom link, so I'll send that to everybody in the chat, and I'll send it to you, Teresa. But he, he's actually one of the initiating gurus of ISKCON. His name is Hridayananda Das Goswami. So he's actually like he's something else. He was initiated by Śrīla Prabhupada. The guy's in he's got to be in his 70s because I think it was like 50 years ago that he started doing bhakti yoga and stuff. But he's a Harvard grad, Sanskrit scholar. I mean, he's just like it's insane that the amount of knowledge. He also goes by HD Goswami, so if you look him up, that's like what he's under. He's usually just like he's this old white bald man in a polo, you know, just hanging out. But like you start to hear him talk, and he's just fascinating. He knows so much, and he is able to break down questions and stuff way better than ever I could. So any like Aaron, if you had questions next week, like those type of questions or anything like really deep and philosophical, the dude's gonna knock them out of the park and like answer questions. And that's literally why he's joining because I'd requested that he joined us because I've watched some of his teachings and his lectures and all this and just super fascinating and he's just that's what he does and I mean he's doing it for free, he's given time and I told him it's a small group and he said awesome, so we'll have plenty of I asked him if he could start chapter 2 for us, but I don't know, he may just kind of do his own thing or just open it up for questions. So um I'm telling you, he's awesome. So I would highly suggest to bring questions if you got them, and if you don't want to verbalize them, you just want to put them in the chat whenever we have it. I know he answers them on the chat too, but it's he's really really cool. Like I said, he's been practicing and teaching for years. He even is fluent in Spanish, which is pretty wild. So, but yeah, so I'm super excited about that. And again, I'll send the link for that. Later. And of course, like I said, I even during your week, if you're just thinking of stuff, write it down and we'll ask him and we'll pick his brain because I've even got some questions I wrote down because I want to pick his brain on stuff and so because not every time do you get an opportunity like this with somebody of that caliber, I mean it's just I mean the guy spoke at Harvard and stuff, and he's gonna be on a Zoom call with us. Like this is crazy. So, but he's fascinating. He's super fascinating, and old hippie from California. So he's a cool guy. He's a really cool guy, real down to earth. But anyway, yeah, I'd encourage you all to join. Again, I'll put it in the chat and stuff so that way we can go. But it's gonna be really cool. He's cool. But anyone else have any questions or anything you want to discuss? Kind of there was a lot, but not a lot of meat there at the end of chapter 1 there, because he's just basically crumbling on us. Arjuna is. So, you got anything, Faith? Are you good? Nope, she said she's good. All right. Gregory, how's your mouth? All good? You hurting? Oh, we got the thumbs up. All right, good. He's high as a kite. All right. Teresa, you good then? All good. Oh, whoopsh. I like it.
Oh, good. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. I think that's a good, the way the chapter ends. I think that's a good place to end.
It's a cliffhanger.
Yeah, right. It just drops everything and it's like the mic drop, just like
Yeah.
the weapons drop.
Yeah. Yeah. The
Like,
weapons drop.
I'm done. Yep, the weapons drop. I'm
Yeah.
done.
Yeah. It's to me, it's, like I said, it's fascinating because I know I've personally been there. I didn't drop a weapon, but, I just like dropped everything and just been done.
Right. And I think that's when you said it before. That's when like self-reflection and spirituality starts is when you get to the point in life where you just cannot
Yeah.
take any friggin' more.
Yeah.
And it's like I can't. I just like I know speaking from my own experience of laying in bed and just being like, God, please, like just please, why? Why is
Yeah.
this all happening? Make it stop.
And I think that's and I'm speaking to myself here too. That's why I try to encourage myself as well as you all to, even when everything's going good, still self-reflect, which is difficult, very difficult. 'Cause it's like, man,
Yeah.
bills are paid, dogs are fed, I'm chilling.
Yeah.
And then you just kind of zone out and or you're doom scrolling, like on your phone, and so it's like just to take that minute to, either in the mornings or, in evenings, whatever's best for you to just take a minute to yourself and just kind of,
Well,
all
I
right,
think that's where, and I know where the Gita is going, but that's where the meditation is coming
yeah,
from.
yeah. And just, carving away some time for yourself to just sit and
Right.
even if you don't, if you don't feel like mantra meditation or you don't want to do regular, like, meditation, just even sitting there for a minute, just taking a couple deep breaths and just like sitting in silence, just even for a minute, I mean, is a game changer, you know? And just learning how to, stop in the world for a minute, you know? But yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah, it slows everything down.
Yeah. And we need that in this society because it's go, go, go.
I find myself doing that when I'm out, like landscaping, because that's how I am. I get up early and pack everything up, and I'm packing, and then I get in a car and I drive 45 minutes to an hour, and then I get there and I just want to start unloading stuff. And
Yeah.
this year so far, I really made it like a mental note that, like, when I pull up and I park my car, I need to just sit there for a moment
Hmm.
and set my intention of what I'm getting ready to do.
Yeah. I think it's important. That's good.
Yeah, instead of getting out, the old me gets out and just starts, unloading stuff, and without even thinking about it, dropping stuff off, different gardens, different places, different stuff, and just boom, 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 boom. And
Yeah.
now I'm approaching it from reading the Gita, really just approaching it and saying, okay, like, what is my intention? And I really like how it's like, give it all to God, give it all to the divine, give it all to a higher power. And
Hmm.
I've really been trying to do that. Like, when I plan, and so I'm like, okay, like, the next 5 hours, you divine, like, this is all for you.
Yeah.
And really trying to, and then I find that things go much smoother.
Yeah.
Except
That's
for
true.
today, when I got stuck in 4.5 hours of rain outside, it was an hour away. I wasn't really happy about all that, but there was nothing I could do. Drove an hour and it started to rain on me, and I was like, oh, it's only supposed to be an hour, and it rained for 4.5 hours.
Yeah. Light
And I
pop-up
was like,
shower. Yeah. It's like Florida.
yeah,
There you go.
yeah,
Yeah.
four and a half
Aaron knows
hours
all
of
about
shower.
that.
Yep, yep. So I landscaped literally in the pouring rain. And
Nice.
was really questioning every decision I ever made in this. If it was cold, it was not warm today,
Yeah.
not in the rain. But yeah, but there was something like divine about that whole instance as well. That goes back to just what you said, when it made me realize how much I love it when it's 75 degrees and sunny,
Yeah. Yeah. It makes you
and how
thankful
much
for
I take,
things. Yeah.
yeah, take for granted nice days.
Yep.
So, yep.
Well, and you'd be thankful for getting rinsed off. There you
No, because I was so
go.
muddy. At first I was like, yay, it was supposed to, it really was. I looked at the radar, it was supposed to be like 45 minutes. So I was like, yay, planting in the rain. That's awesome. Because then I went and I dug up all the holes and everything I was doing so I could, so things could just get wet, because it's like the top layer, surface layer of the earth gets wet, but
Yeah.
everything is so dry right now. And so I was trying to just open up as much space as I could so the rain could get down. And at least when I was planting it wet. And then by like hour three, I was like, I'm not kidding.
It's
Because
funny.
now all my holes are filled with water and it was mud slinging everywhere. And I was like, okay, please make it stop. Please do this freaking rain. But at the same time, there was something like just really beautiful about the whole thing. And on my way home today, I was like, wow, I'm really glad today happened. That was,
Yeah. It's all what
yeah,
you make it.
yeah, 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 yeah. I think Bob Marley said it right best. Some people dance in the rain while other people just get wet.
Yeah. Yeah. There you go.
So, yep, yeah.
I love it. Aaron, you good? All good?
I mean, yeah, list of questions, but I mean, we can cover this another time if you want. I know we're at the
That's all
top of
right.
the hour.
Hit me with one more and then we'll close out. What do you got?
Where do babies come from? No, I'm kidding.
I've got a video to show you.
I mean, reading through Civilization and Transcendence, I read this like once in one sitting, and I went back and I've just been reading it a second time just to understand it all properly. But I mean, you started this meeting by saying like some of the things in this 5,000-year-old text in the Gita are aged, and it also is being translated into English, so
Yes.
it's a little different. But in this book, AC says that we shouldn't even question the Gita, that it is your guru and that it is infallible and that those are
Sure.
strictly the words of the divine, and so that it hasn't aged poorly, that we've aged poorly, I suppose. My emphasis, not his, but
Hmm.
uh,
Well, that actually is exactly basically what I was saying because the
okay,
actual text itself was good. It was the purport, Srila Prabhupada's purport that mentioned that, you know? So the actual text of the Bhagavad Gita is pure, so to speak, you know? So that was when Srila Prabhupada puts it, like, as you see, so that version you have, what did I do with it? There it is. So, of course, there's the camera. You've got the Sanskrit text,
yeah,
the transliteration of how it's pronounced, and then he breaks down all of the transliteration of, you can see where, actually, you know what? I got one better here for you. Let me show you this. I forgot I can share my screen. Hold on. All right. So let me go back up here and show this. Like, because you're going to, let me add all these here. All right. So we'll just look at text one since it's right here. So you have the Sanskrit, of course, right here. And then this is the transliteration. So that's how you pronounce the Sanskrit. So if we were to read this and we actually knew Sanskrit, we would pronounce it Dhartarashtra Yuvaka, Dharma Kesetre Kuru Kesetre, Samaveta Yutasava, so much, So that's how, and then what Prabhupada does here is he takes those words, so Dhartarashtra Yuvaka means King Dhartarashtra said, Dharma Kasetra in the place of pilgrimage. He breaks down exactly which, that's one of the reasons why it's called the Bhagavad Gita as it is because he's breaking it down literal translation word by word. And so, of course, if you were to read it exactly as it is, of course, it's going to say, you know, um, hold on. We got a little thing stuck here. There we go. It says, King Dhritarashtra said, in the place of pilgrimage, in the place named Kuru Kasetra, assembled, desiring to fight. But of course, that doesn't make any sense, right? So he translates it, Dhritarashtra said, O Sanjaya, after my sons and the sons of Pandu assembled in the place of pilgrimage at Kuru Kasetra, desiring to fight, what did they do? And that's kind of, you can kind of see all those words are up here in the synonyms of where he broke down what they are. So the translation there in like in your version that you have, the darkened bold words are the actual translation of the Bhagavad Gita. The purport stuff is where Prabhupada tries to break down and tries to make it digestible, and his um reflections and intuitions on what those each one of those verses mean, you know? So the reason that it is said that it's basically, you know, it should be taken for what it is, exactly as it is, because Krishna spoke it. So, like I said, what Krishna spoke when we read it was, I mean, dead on. He's talking about, things that are, or, actually Arjuna was talking, but, talking about everything that's going on and what potentially could happen in the world, when all these things happen. So I mean, the actual Bhagavad Gita itself was dead on. The only thing that ever comes into question is potentially the purports, or what is, because again, as even Prabhupada said, he's a human too, he's fallible. I mean, we're all humans. We all make mistakes. So, that's one of the reasons why you read, and that's kind of what I was trying to get at when we were diving into text 40 is this may be a little off kilter, but what can I learn from this? And I really feel like you can do that. You can use that lens in any situation. I mean, God forbid like, well, I had a dog die not too long ago, and it crushed me. I had him for years and years. I rescued him, found him on the side of the road. He was emaciated, you know, like what can I learn from somebody treating a dog like that, you know? Well, there's bad people in here. What like maybe they need to sense and feel love. Maybe they weren't loved as a kid, you know, and they're taking it out on an animal. I don't know. So what can I do? I can just make sure everybody I meet potentially feels love and compassion from me, and you know, I'm not a jerk to them. I try to be a nice person to everybody, you know. I mean, that all I can do is control what I can control. So, and that's just within my little meat box here around my soul. That's all that I can control. So, if I see those things, I try to, you know, learn from them and try to apply it. And does it make a difference? Hell, I don't know. You know, it's kind of like the pay it forward thing. You know, I don't know if it helps somebody or not, but I feel like that's my dharma is to try to make sure that I'm impacting everybody in a positive way because I don't know what they're going through. I don't know what they've been through, I don't know. Um, so I mean, you know, to that point again, what Krishna says and what is actually in the Gita is primo knowledge, you know. So and I'm excited to finally get into like chapter 2 and beyond because there's like there's some stuff in there. I know the first time that I went through it that I was like, "Oh, dang, that's awesome." That's like I never really thought about that way before, you know, or something like it really gets the gears working. And again, I think that's what the whole purpose is to get your mind thinking, questioning things, you know, and trying to figure out how can I apply this, you know? So that answer it pretty good.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, we're at the beginning, so I'm patient. We'll get through more.
Yeah.
I'll keep soaking in.
Yeah. No, and I appreciate your openness, you know, and I appreciate you asking questions and, you know, because that also, you know, gets me kind of trying to figure out, you know, things and learn things too and making sure that I understand, you know, things. Faith put something in the chat here, said it's a little hard to accept that fact that in essence the Gita is essential knowledge. I'm tempted to always question the absolutes, you know. And yeah, I'm the same way too because I was raised in a very strict Christian home, you know. So even when I first started getting into bhakti yoga, reading the Bhagavad Gita and all these things, I was like, oh my God, am I doing it right? Like, am I gonna have hellfire and brimstone like brought upon me, you know, or is it like, you know, but once I got it through my head that this really isn't a religion. It's more of a philosophy and a mindset. And Prabhupada always calls it a spiritual science because, you know, if it's a religion, somebody's telling you what to do. You know, this is what you got to do to be able to be liberated. This is what you got to do in order to be saved. You know, this is what, you know, there's a lot more what you have to do. This is by calling it a spiritual science, it's almost like, you know, if I'm doing a science experiment, I'm going to trial this and I'm going to see if it works. You know, my hypothesis is I don't know. You know, I don't know if this is legit, but I'm going to try it and I'm going to see what actions come of it, what reactions, and you know, really put it to the fire, the beaker, you know, to see what boils out of the top and what I get from it, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I've always kind of understood religion to be, a human construct or an organization of
Sure.
of the understanding of God. But what I thought was really cool that's listed throughout the book over and over and over. I mean, every chapter was saying, I wrote this down. Religion means to love God, and he just kept saying that over and over. That's all it is just.
Yeah.
And how do
And
you love God? And he broke that down. But I thought that was really the best description I've ever heard
yeah, and
of
that's
real
one
religion.
thing that a lot of people have. It's very difficult for them to understand because like without getting too deep, because I know it's like 5 after 8, but um, for me, whenever I was like searching to try to find what connected with me, I tried everything. Like, I mean, all different paths of religion, spirituality, and I think I'd mentioned before that I'd kind of landed on omniism, where all paths lead to the same higher power. And that made sense to me because I'm like, you know, it just probably just depends on where you're born, you know, like of what you get. And like we're here, so we get Christianity. That's a potential path to try to get to God. if you're born in the Middle East, then you probably have Islamic faith that you're, getting up there, Hinduism, and so there's all these paths that I'm thinking, oh, that makes sense. Well, once I started to dive into bhakti and stuff, they're like, they consider all the texts, the Bible, the Quran, all of those are texts that get people closer to God. So they're like, oh, that's awesome. You're reading that. That's cool. And that just blow like especially Christian minds like here that blow like I don't know what to do when I'm like, dude, that's awesome. They're like, but and I'm like, no, I mean, if you're like getting closer to God, like I don't care. That's cool, man. Like I mean, I think it's good that you're seeking out spirituality and that, and for me that was very, very difficult because I'd been burned so hard on Christianity, and just been like and just hated what it stood for. And even now, but again, going back to Faith's point, there's no absolutes. So I can't blame, because if you boil it down, like that's really even what the Bible's about is like God is love, and of course, you got the hellfire and brimstone stuff, but, it's like essentially that's really what Jesus taught was, love your neighbor, like the true love is what Jesus taught. And that's essentially what is, that's good. That's not a bad thing, I mean, that's essentially kind of what Krishna is going to be talking about is trying to find your purpose and like, you know, I mean, it's just really fascinating that they really kind of they go hand in hand and there's even a lot of things when I first started diving into the Gita that I was like, wait, did the Bible rip this off? Because, this is an older text, and um but there's a lot of there's a few parallels, in there that it's just kind of you can't ignore. It's pretty interesting. Faith put in the chat, it's reassuring to applying the principles in the Gita are more flexible. Basically, keep working towards achieving a higher level of consciousness, so we keep elevating in each return of our soul. So yeah, and that's the one thing that again, the Christian faith kind of was like, oh my God, like freaked me out is like, well, what if I don't chant enough rounds of the Maha Mantra? Or what if I don't meditate enough? Or what if I'm not reading enough? Because then, in the Christian faith, then you're just gonna burn in hell. And so that's like that fear was still kind of instilled into me, but talking to one of my spiritual mentors, Kishore Das, who's here in Lexington. He's a Nepali guy that's just fantastic. I meet with him sometimes and we talk Bhagavad Gita and things. And he was like, if say you don't make it to one of the higher planets, this lifetime, try again next lifetime. That's no problem. And I'm like, oh, what? And he's like, yeah, you just because you basically, the belief is that, say, you made it up to a certain higher consciousness of belief and thought, and like on your path to liberation, that if you pass away, you start where you left off, and then you just keep going. So I'm like, well, hell, if I screw it up this life, I guess I'll just catch it in the next one. I mean, I've already lived thousands and thousands of lives. What's a few more? So that to me is a lot less pressure, and there's no condemnation there. It's like you just try this and you just try to level up and you move on. And to me, that's encouraging, So pretty neat stuff. Anybody else got anything? No? Well, I'm excited about our next session because like I said, if you got any questions or anything, that'd be the one to ask because it's going to be and we'll probably have a few other visitors because I know he's going to, he's got like a lady that runs his media, and I think he's got, I know some people from Chicago that are, like followers of his, so they may log on and, join us too and stuff just to listen to him speak. So we may have a few extra people in the Zoom call with us, but they're all just, wanting to listen to HD Goswami too because he's like I said, he's really fascinating. So thanks again for y'all being here tonight. I appreciate y'all so much. Um, and hopefully I didn't have any offense to anybody or anything tonight. I'm still learning and still growing, so trying to uh, make myself better too. So I'm still in the growth process like everyone else. So But I appreciate your willingness to learn and, just let me chat with you and bounce stuff off each other. So thank you so much. Appreciate you all so much. Hare Krishna.
Much love.
All right, have a good night and a good week.